This past week, in the wake of my father's serious illness, I did a podcast on acceptance and how difficult it can be for us to accept things in life. Well, there's another related skill to acceptance that I think people in our world aren't very good at either, and that's the ability to let go. The ability to let go. I think we have a very difficult time letting go of grudges, of anger and resentments, past loves, loved ones that die or leave, past hurts. You name it, people seem to hang on to a lot of that stuff. We have a tough time also of letting go of material things. I'm amazed at how much we tend to hang on to. There are even television shows about people who hoard, who cannot let go of one single thing. When I moved here last year, rather suddenly, not having a lot of time to be able to do a ton of packing, I actually got rid of a ton of stuff. And yet, still, once we were packing, I thought, I brought way too much stuff with me, especially many of the books that I have. Perhaps today's readings will help us to see how important it is to be able to have that ability to let go. They may help us to see that the only possession worth having is Jesus Christ himself. So let's take a look at those readings. In the first reading from Genesis, Abraham is willing to let go of what is most precious to him, his only son from his wife Sarah. Now remember, they had been childless, and they certainly were past the age in which they could normally have children. And then God makes this audacious promise to give them a son who would be the first of many descendants, as numerous as the stars in the sky. Ironically, in being willing to let go of his son, he was able then to receive him back as a gift from God. Now, we may find it disturbing in our day, since it portrays God as asking Abraham to sacrifice that son of his. I think we find it a bit shocking, that image of God asking a father to sacrifice his son. But if we stay there, I think we're going to miss the whole point of the episode that we heard about today. God didn't want Isaac to be killed. Rather, God wanted to see how deep Abraham's devotion was. Would he be willing to give up everything for the love of God? Despite appearances, would Abraham trust that God always fulfills his promises, no matter how much it might look so desperate? And the willingness of Abraham to let go of what was most precious to him, that became an inspiration for the people of Israel in the rest of their history. He had already shown a willingness to let go of everything, his family and his homeland, as he set out towards an unknown land in response to the call that God gave him. And now Abraham was even willing to let go of what he thought was his future. And he did all of that for the love of God. And the early church understood the relationship between Abraham and Isaac as a foretaste of the relationship between God the Father and Jesus, his son. Like Abraham, God the Father was prepared to let go of what was most precious to him, his divine son. And he did it out of love for you and for me. God was prepared to let his son take on our human flesh with all the dangers and sorrows that entails. Even St. Paul marveled at the generosity of God on our behalf. How did he put it in our second reading today? He who did not spare his own son handed him over for us all. God let his beloved son take on our human nature, even though the consequences would mean the rejection of Jesus, his son, by his own chosen people. and ultimately leads to that cruel death on a cross. Even after Jesus was crucified, God continued to give him to us as the risen Savior. When St. Paul contemplates the self-emptying love of God for us, he asks this question: if God is for us, who can be against us? If God's love for us is so total, then we have nothing to fear from anyone or anything. So in the words of St. Paul, we should be able to let go of anything here on earth for the sake of Jesus Christ, since Christ was able to give up even the dignity of his divinity for love of us. And I think that theme of letting go can even be found in the transfiguration, which we heard about in our gospel reading today. Peter, James, and John, they're taken up that high mountain by Jesus, and they have this experience which absolutely takes their breath away. It was an experience that was so amazing that Peter did not want to let go of it. He wanted to prolong it indefinitely. So what does he say to Jesus? Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let's make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. In other words, he is saying, I don't want to let go of this incredible experience. So let's set up shop here. We're going to put up a few tents so we can draw this out indefinitely. They had a momentary glimpse of heaven, and they simply did not want to let go of it. Yet Peter and the others had to let go of this awesome experience. It was only intended to be momentary. It was a foretaste of what would come after their work on earth was done. So what was their job for now? As they continued their lives on earth, well, God the Father tells them, this is my beloved Son, listen to him. Listen to him. Do whatever he tells you. Though with a few starts and stops, with some mistakes, that's exactly what they ended up doing. In the end, here on earth, they did end up letting go of practically everything, all for the love of Jesus Christ. What did they let go of? Family, home, country, the jobs they knew, security, prestige, honor, until they had to even finally let go of the notion that they would die a peaceful and natural death. Letting go was a practice that they became very, very familiar with. My dear brothers and sisters, we are in the midst of a season which bids us to let go of food we want or like, of our time so we can be devoted more to prayer, of comforts so that we can learn to practice sacrifice. The church is helping us to accept that following Christ always means honing our ability to let go. We forgive so that we can let go of anger and retribution. We fast so that we can hunger for Jesus Christ. We give away our time and money so that we can know that Christ is our most cherished possession. We are even called to let go of our own will so that the will of God takes hold of our very lives. This Lent, learn to let go more and more so that you can one day be ready to let go of your very last breath, that in the words of the poet Khalil Gibran says, it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered.